Dr. Charshee Mcintyre.
Hotel, Habarigani, Assalamu alaikum, peace unto you, my brothers and sisters. May the ancestors bless me with some wisdom with which I may share, and if that is not apparent, it is not their fault, and I will try again and again until I get it right. Is there anyone here who will admit that they are older than I, who will give me permission to speak?
Not me.
Sister
I am
William.
older than you, and I give you permission to speak.
Thank you very much. My sister always gets confused about that. Shall I tell the truth? This is my second home, Philadelphia. In fact, I wanted it to be my first home, but the half that makes me whole, the totality of my reality, my partner of some 40 years is a musician, and somewhere along the line there was a blood oath of all African American musicians, and they cut wrists and tongues, etc., and they must live in New York. But it is through the understanding of the spiritual dimension of our music that we are able to make an understanding of how much we really lost and how much we need to regain. And as they adulterate our music, and I like rap, and I want that on the tape, but as the imitators and expropriators adulterate our music and try to reduce it to its most limited form, as we struggle continuously to stretch it to the fullest extension of what the divine creator endowed our people with, the ability to improvise and create and consistently come up with something new, which is our heritage, it gives us a measure of how creative and how deep the well of our intellectual and spiritual and creative ability is. And so I'm not going to give a lecture on music, although I do. I'm going to give this lecture on the concept of God, African concept of God. But the analogy, sometimes when people think that they really can't understand and think that perhaps what someone's saying might be a little esoteric, might be a little confused, all you really have to do is go back to the music, and listen to the music, because when African people listen to the music, they listen to the music here in the center of their soul, and then it comes out through the ears and stuff. We don't listen to the music here. And when we dance from here. We dance with our bodies. We dance with everything. And then by the time it gets to our feet, that's just minor. Right? You understand what I'm trying to tell you? And so you need to understand that. You need to understand that the Nile flows up. The Nile starts in the center of Africa, and the mightiest and most powerful and the longest and the most ancient river that man knows of flows out. It begins in the center of Africa, the White Nile, and the Blue Nile begins up in the Ambas of Ethiopia, and they come together to perform the miraculous ability to take the dead soil that has come this long trip up from Tanzania and Uganda, and then it's refreshed by the waters of the Nile, because you know how mountain water picks up all this rich soil from the roots of the trees, and then it comes together at Khartoum, and where it comes together, it produces this very rich soil. And so the people that settled at that place, at that time where civilization and agriculture and math and science and philosophy all came together, they saw this miracle and being wedded to the soil and understanding Mother Nature, which they called Isis, and understanding Mother Nature, Earth, which is the fundamental giver of all life. Earth brings the sky. Earth brings the rain. You know, they assist Earth, and so they worshiped all of this. They worshipped it in its divine principle, which was the female principle. It was the giver and sustainer of life. And when they look back on their own reality, and they look back at their own mothers, then they saw, aha, she is the giver and sustainer of life. And they revered this very wonderful principle of Mother Earth and Mother immediate first person that I am aware of outside of self. Are you following me? Yes. First person I am aware of outside of self is Mother. And that occurs before we ever enter this world. As a seed, we start out in this primordial ocean. You know, all ancient myths, all religious myths, I don't care what they are, discuss this primordial water. Now you have to say to yourself, because you are African people, and all knowledge is rooted in reality. I don't care what Europeans tell you. All knowledge is rooted in reality, and all reality is rooted in experience, and all abstract thought is rooted in an analogy to experience from reality. Now they can tell you all that abstract reality. For them, that may be true, because if you sit 100,000 years on ice, maybe you do get abstract. You know, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. That is not my reality. I can't argue with that. Say you are a seed. Say that you understand. How many of you plant anything? When you plant, when you take that seed, you expect, you believe that you can get a perfect whatever you're planting. You nurture it. You believe in the perfectibility of that seed. Is that true? If you plant an orange, a mango, citrus, you Jamaican citrus, here we call them oranges. Okay, if you plant a rose, if you plant a cactus, when you put it in there and you treat it correctly and you nurture it and you do whatever you think you need to do to make it grow, you expect a perfect plant. You know you may not get it, but you believe the perfectibility of that seed's growth is possible. Is that not so? Why should it be different for humans? Why should it be different for us? Here we are, a seed in this primordial ocean, which is what? The womb. There are no windows in the womb. Total darkness. There is no activity in the womb when the seed is there. Something must impregnate that seed, something that none of us really know, and some people speculate about to explain to us why life comes into being. But every single seed that breaks to become more than the one it was, to become the two and then the three and then the four, right? Every seed breaks to become the stem. And then it breaks again to become the blossom. Is that not true? And so do we. So do we. We break to become the fetus, right? And then to become the child. And then to become the human. And that is being and becoming. Is it not so? You be, and everything, it is axiomatic that everything, even the thoughts that you are thinking now, are breaking into new thoughts. They are being when they come into existence, but they have the potential of becoming, right? Every single thing in the world bees and becomes. That's why black people say our bees, because we know we's going to become something, right? Now hold that thought, because it's very important, because the European God concept is just that God is. See, it's just that God is total. He just bees. He don't become nothing. He just exists. He, I say he. I'm talking about the European God. I'm not talking about the one y'all are going to get happy with tomorrow. I'm talking about the European God concept. And I don't think any African people, I don't care who you are, really understand the European God concept. You understand your God concept and translate out of your reality and your experience what God is. But you never stop to discuss with them, because I went and got a master's degree to find out what those suckers were talking about. They ain't talking about my God. Let me just give you, hold the thought, because I'm going to lose my thought. I'm at the European God concept, right? Okay? When I was working on a master's degree, they said, what is the commonality between music, whiskey, or alcohol, and church, or religion? And I was the only black in the class, as you know we usually are when we decide to get an advanced degree, right? And everybody wrote down their answers, and they all put narcoticize you. And the teacher, with great knowledge, says, correct. And I said, ain't what I got. And then, of course, they said, well, what do you have? You know, because I'm this little, strange person in the class. I said, I got, they make you happy. Because black people have music to get happy, we get high to get happy, and we go to church to get happy. God, this world is enough to narcoticize us. We don't need nothing else to put us out. We need something to put us in. And the teacher said, isn't that exotic? I said, hell no, that's cultural. You understand? It's very important to defend your culture. It isn't so much that we don't know we have a different God concept, and most African people do. They say, God is in my heart. He ain't out there. God is in my heart. If God don't be for me, don't nobody be for me. That's not that God you got to meet at the end of the trip. They got that little book, Lois denied that she's older than Charshee, one sin, right? You don't even get to talk to this sucker until after your trip is over. How are you going to improve your trip? I was Catholic. I used to say, this is strange, because he don't talk to you, you can't talk to him, he don't see you, you can't see him, he don't hear you, you can't hear him, he has no responsibility to you, and you ain't sure if you got any to him, because he may have already consigned your butt to the devil. I mean, Lucifer may be who you should be hip to, and you need to hold that thought too. So you see, but in the African world, God is not this, I'm going to smite the person. In the African world, God can smite you. God can do some serious things to you. But God also allows you to tap into the power of divine existence. And we know that because our music is an invocating of God, the invoking of God. That's what our music does. And you know it. You know when we got to get happy and we start to move, and you watch them sisters' feet go, they go faster than some of these blades out here. Zoom, zoom. You ever watch people get happy when they're singing that gospel music every Sunday morning? I watch Bobby Jones, do you give him the gospel train? And you watch those sisters and they start singing and their feet are going so fast. I got out of bed one day and tried to make my feet go that fast because I thought I was a hip dancer, but I was not empowered. You understand what I'm saying? I was just trying to imitate the action, and those people don't know their feet are going at all. They don't know their feet are going at all. They're singing and their feet are going and they're getting happy. And some of us, tell the truth, especially here in Philadelphia, some of us that's a little too much. It cannot be too much to invoke the power of divine existence. It can only be too much if you do not understand what the power of divine existence is. And there is no question about us being chosen by divine existence, because we're here. Because we're here. Every single thing Lucifer could think to do to us, he has done to us here in the belly of this beast. Every single thing. But we are here, and we are here competitively. And we are here transforming the world. And we are here telling the world, you can no longer believe in a divine existence to which you are not accountable and which is not accountable to you. You can no longer do that because you've destroyed the air, the water, and the earth. And we are humans, and we need accountability. You understand? And the African God concept makes you accountable every day and every moment, like that orange seed is accountable to respond to the nurturing that is making it grow. You are in the womb, primordial ocean that all religions discuss. You are in the womb. What is in the womb? Water is in the womb. It is a deep, bottomless, topless, sideless ocean, right? If you're just a seed. And it isn't until some powerful, unexplained molecular interference occurs and some miracle causes birth. It's not sex. I can prove that. How many of you have had sex in the last year or two? Well, where's all the birth? So that dispenses that, right? It's not sex. I mean, sex may be contributive, but it's not sufficient, right? You understand what I'm trying to get to? People are telling us lies, and we are believing it. Sex does not bring forth children. It could. You got to have a healthy body. You got to have a healthy environment for a seed to grow. What did they tell you about immaculate conception? All conception is immaculate. Dirty seeds don't grow. You understand what I'm saying? If you got a bad seed, what happens to it in the soil? It don't take. All conception is immaculate. We need to understand that. We need to understand. Now, this is the way Africans look at the process of birth. They look at the process of birth as this miracle. But more important, they look at the process of birth as an understanding of the miracle of all existence. Because that's what each experience is supposed to teach you. Not just this happened here, but how what happens here you can intuit. You know, intuition, you can intuit. You know, like we say, I'm getting into it. You know, we can intuit, intuition. We can go from the central nervous system and understand. We can apprehend. We can grasp an understanding because we have seen it in its universal application. So every single mystery system, every single religious system begins all of humanity in a flood. What's a bigger flood than the womb? What is the universal water experience that we all have? Why every time in the, as John Clark calls it, Jewish folklore that we now read as the Bible? And I say that because I have this Pentecostal student who tells me the Bible is the Word of God. I say all words are the Word of God because God gave us the power to invoke the Word, no more. So I mean, but then we have to look at how it has been translated and transliterated, etc. Okay? We're reading, and I said, well, what is this unadulterated Word of John? The King James Version. I said, oh, God went and talked to King James and told him to write the Bible. Not the Gideon Bible, not the Catholic Bible, not the Jewish Bible. Doesn't it tell you that if you got all these different versions that perhaps there may be a mistake in the one you're reading? But I'm not putting down the Bible. I don't put down anybody's religion. I don't put down any, I'm just saying, take what you know. Go into your own spirituality when you enter that holy book. See, take your experience and say, aha. You know, how many of you came from a rib? So now we can kill that. And there are no rib people here. I can go back to my analogy of the womb. Now, I'm going to have to be careful, There may be one or two of you who came out the rib. And, I don't know about other ethnic groups. Maybe they all came from a rib. They sure didn't come from the same womb that we came from, But that's another lecture. Okay. So we all came out of this primordial ocean. In the beginning was the womb. Do you know that in the beginning of Earth, you know what makes Earth habitable for human beings? Is water. All of the planets are too hot because they don't have the balance of water that we have that cooled off this particular planet. Right? So water is the source of life. Now let's go back to the now. You have these two things, and what do you have? You have this miraculous water. Already we've made a connection between the water that brought us life, the water that sustains us, because sun does not sustain you. Sun is nice, but it does not sustain you. You can live without sun. You cannot live without water. You can even maybe live without food, but you cannot live without water. 98 or 80 some odd % of you is water. So Osiris, which is the principle of water, of moisture, of all forms of water, is considered a male principle. Why? Because Isis, Mother Nature, Earth, is considered a female principle. But what makes Earth work? Water. Otherwise you have a desert, right? You have destruction, right? So when we hear these terms, Isis, Osiris, Ra, Ra is the principle of illumination. Okay? Amun is the principle of that which is hidden, that which is not known. But what you have, let me just give you a few of them, is Amun, that which is unknown, hidden. Ra, that which is revealed. Ptah, that which is expressed. Because what is the point of something being revealed to me if I cannot share it with you? Okay? Now, so when you get into the ancient African belief system and understanding of God, there are a couple of terms, kind of big terms, but there are a couple that you need to understand. We are taught that there's a one God, right? I would like you to put ness on the end of it. There is a oneness. Okay? Just like there's a one you, but the one you is the oneness. You are not just you. You're the thoughts you think, you're your eyes, you're your ears. You understand what I'm saying? The one in the many. Everyone has more than the one in order to be. Because as I said before, anything that be has the potential of becoming, and so therefore it always has to be at least two, right? You are what you are and what you can become. And that you also, whatever you are not. So you follow the law of opposite. So in ancient Africa, you had Osiris, who was water, right? And you had Isis, who was earth. And you put them together and you have a totality. You have a balance. You have the male and female principle. Okay? You have a back. What am I telling you? What do you know there is? A front, right? You have one. What do you know there is? If I say the first thing I don't like about you, what do you say? What's the second? Okay? The law of opposites leads to the law of complementarity. Because what's the opposite of opposite? Complementarity. Okay? So if there's a male, there's a female. In order to be whole, one has to have the male and female principle. If you have Set, which is the principle of dryness, you have Nephthys, which is the principle of moisture, and so forth and so on. So now when people start to study ancient Kemetic or Egyptian philosophy, they get a little confused. And I'm not going to give you a lecture on that either, but I just want you to understand that what Africans understood was that divine existence is the way the European identifies it, is the one. Because everything begins with the one, right? You can't have a two if you don't have a one. But what they did was they stopped there. They stopped there. The one that never becomes anything but creates everything. But see, Africans don't do it that way. The European says the one that never becomes anything created everything but is not connected to anything. Europeans say the one thing that is something is no thing, which is God. Right? Because if I tell you this is God, you say that ain't God. But if I say African, I say this is God, you say yes, this is God, everything is God. If it's omniscient, all-knowing, if it's omnipotent, all-powerful, if it's omnipresent everywhere, that's all-knowing, all-present, everywhere, all places, then what is the commonality? All. Oneness. Not one, but oneness. It's a unity. Existence is a unity, but within a unity are component parts, right? Now the component parts are called hypostases. Hypostasis is how is the one yet the many. You know that because we say out of many one, or Jamaica, one people out of it, one room, one lecture, but many people. But it's still one. But it's oneness, not one. It's very important to understand this difference, because that means that we, if you want to see God, if you want to see divine existence, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. Now what does that do? Check that out. What does that do? Now before I get to Europeans, I'll show you everything in the ancient African world reflected this understanding of divinity. One, vertical, meant divine man. Say that. One is what? Divine man. Vertical. Horizontally, one was fallen man. Because if you get to be divine, you can fall, right? Okay. Now, the semicircle represented spirit. So two is what? Spirit with what? Fallen man, right? Now what's three? Double spirit, right? Now what's four? Divine man, fallen man, divine man, held up by divine man. So what's five? Fallen man, held up by divine man, assisted by spirit, right? What's six? Six is divine man with double spirit, which is totality, right? What's seven? Fallen man held up by divine man. What's eight? Double wholeness. What's nine? Wholeness held up by divine man. What is 10? 10 is divine man with totality added up is the higher order of the original one, which is what you're supposed to do with your life. You start off with one and you move through all these stages of original divinity. You start off with stages, you become whole, you become a person, you become mind, body, and spirit, and intellect, right? You're endowed with free will. What is free will? Free will is the ability for you to not be locked into your basic instincts. A cat must be a cat, unless Hollywood gets hold of him. You understand? Animals must stay within the confines of their basic nature. Is that not so?
Yes.
But humans have full reign to use their minds to either stay within their basic nature or to move on to whatever they want to. They can become more bestial, and we know many do, or they can become extremely intellectual, and we know some do, and they become very spiritual, right? The choice is whose? The choice is yours. That's what free will is. That is precisely what free will is. It has nothing to do with original sin. It has nothing to do with original sin. Now let's take the myth of original sin. Now I'm not asking you all to believe anything I tell you today. All I'm asking you to do is look and see if what I say makes sense. And if what I say makes sense, then go back to what you believe and explore what you believe. Because faith should be based in reality. Faith should be informed by your intuition and your heart, then your mind, so that your spirit will be easy with what you believe. Your spirit should be easy with what you should believe. It should follow ma'at. Ma'at is balance and order. In the beginning, you came into the world, you were one, you were a seed. You apprehended the fact that you were one because you were in this water, and at some point as you began to germinate, you began to feel wetness or hear or touch or something. Senses became apparent to you, gurgling, hearing, senses, and then you became conscious of what? The other. Who was the other? The other was mother. You came into a blinding light. Wow! The first light you ever saw in your life would be the most blinding light you ever saw, right? That's why babies cry. There are no windows in the womb. You have never seen light. You've heard, you've touched, you've eaten. You've heard the rhythm of the heart. You've heard the sound of the waves. You know all of the elements except fire and light in the womb, right? Okay? You come into the world and you born 9 months in, 9 months out. This is before Nestle's Quick and all these bottled baby days. Who sustains you? The human being cannot live in the world without what? Mother's milk. In Africa, mothers nurture their babies for 2 years. They do not have sex for 2 years because they concentrate on a child-centered survival. You know any African brothers that are going to wait 2 years? And knowing brothers have such poor taste, African sisters say, I know that I have to take care of this child, so I have picked Karen for you. First wife picks second wife. Polygyny is a design of women because the community was designed to raise the children. And the children are always attended to. So, man looks around this room and he sees 4 old women or 2 old women. And you have to realize man does not know that he is responsible for the bringing forth of the child, right? But woman has to know that. After all, she sees the child come out. Now let's look at the myth of the Garden of Eden. Woman is a mystery system. She can bleed a week without dying. Now we're talking about extrapolate back. Take off all your clothes and just go back to nature. You only know nature. No lights, no TV, no nothing. Just you and nature. And what do you see? You see this miraculous human being that can bleed a month without dying, a week without dying. And not just one woman, but all these women can do that. Okay? This is a miracle. Man cannot bleed 10 minutes without dying. Without thinking about dying. So you're worshiping this very miraculous human being. She brought us here. Now mind you, you're not worshiping your girlfriend. You're worshiping the mothers that brought the community into being. You understand what I'm saying? It is a vertical relationship. We're not talking about Susie May and Johnny Jones. We're talking about child and mother. Because the first principle in life is the giver and sustainer of life. That's why we love God. Father love, because he is the creator. And that is not to say that the God that Europeans tell you exists does not exist. But in our primitive state right now, which we all are in, what we see is experience. We know we definitely came from this particular person. We know that we suckled this breast. We know that we survived because of this love. You understand what I'm saying? And so we revere these people. Who takes care of us when we're sick? So woman is a miracle system. Now there's another miracle system in this garden. It's the tree of life that grows and drops fruit down for us. So it also helps us sustain. And then there's another miracle in this system. And that's this little wiggly thing, the snake. I have this ureus, the snake. Now, one day I was trying to figure out, now why does the snake symbolize wisdom? You know, it's called the ureus. It symbolizes wisdom, and it looks like this. And if you look like the primordial waters is called Nun, N-U-N. And if you write that, you'll get a wave, because vibrations is what brings everything into being, molecular transference. You understand what I'm saying? You know, like black people say, man, it's the vibes. You know, the vibes ain't cool. You know, what's happening between us. Because that's what really brings life into being. It's not the sex. It's whatever vibrational interaction causes that seed to burst into life. And so the snake represents all that. But the snake represents something so profound, it's so simple. Have any of you ever seen a snake shed its skin? When a snake sheds its skin, it sheds all of its skin, even the covering over its eyes. And so if you look, it looks like the snake has died and immediately rebirths, incarnates. And you say, that sucker has all the wisdom in the world, because it can die and incarnate immediately, right? And it does it several times. You know, snakes periodically shed. Now, you're a primitive person, and you're saying, now, when we die, that, you know, nothing comes forward. But the woman has this life and death interaction, and she brings forth a person, doesn't she? And what is attached to this person, this little person? What's attached to it? An umbilical cord onto this blood, and it's the snake. And the placenta, you bury. You do know primitive people bury the placenta. And what grows in that very rich earth that is a tree of life, okay? Now, we're beginning to see a connection here. I bet that woman been talking to that snake. And I bet that snake didn't tell that woman everything. Just a little bit. Just enough for her to bring forth another person. But the other person is dependent. It's not a full-blown entity. And so man is looking, and he said, I can't bring forth life. I can't die and come back to life. You know. And woman also learned to milk the snake. You know what happens when you milk the snake and drink the venom? If you don't die, you have visions, and you can foretell the future. And so woman becomes a mystery system in the inner circle. So what does man do? Man develops a mystery circle in the outer circle. That's what the temples and the pyramids and all that about. You come into the world in the womb, you go out in what? A tomb, right? Womb tomb. What is the shape of the pyramid? The shape of the pyramid is like a breast, is it not? And what do you have down in the Holy of Holies is the womb with the fallopian tube. Because if you're going on to the next world, you might as well go the same way you came here. Because fundamental in the African world is birth, life, rebirth, death, birth, life, rebirth, death, birth, life, rebirth. And so, how do we know that? Because Ra rises every morning, comes up in the east, hits its highest point at noon, comes back down and dies, and goes on this heavy trip in the darkness of night. And comes what? Next morning, rebirth. You understand? The cycle of existence, the being and becoming, the highest point, etc. Now this is what informed the African mind. And you will find this among the Yola, J-O-L-O-F, in West Africa, among the South Africans, you will find it among the Nok people, you will find it among the ancient Egyptians, which they keep trying to tell us Egypt is not in Africa, but somehow the Nile is in Africa, and somehow Egypt is not in Africa, but developed the Nile Valley civilization, and the Nile is in Africa, and how we get that together, I really don't know. But what they want you to believe is that Egypt is not in Africa. And the reason they want you to believe Egypt is not in Africa is so that you will believe that Africans are not in Egypt.
Yeah.
And if you believe Africans are not in Egypt, then they think they can take Africans out of world history.
Right.
And that's why they don't want to call you an African American, because then you would know that you are responsible for all that is.
That is right.
You see?